Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Your Mark on the World show. I'm your host, Devin Thorpe, and I am so incredibly excited. We have as our guest today, Holly Richardson. She is truly amazing. If I said she is the real Wonder Woman, you will believe it when you're done listening to this episode. So stick around.
Welcome to Your Mark on the World, bringing you another change maker with champion of social good, Devin D. Thorpe.
This episode is made possible via the support of our sponsors, including Johnson & Johnson's Caring Crowd.
Hi, Holly. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
We're thrilled. Oh my gosh, you are such an amazing person. I stand amazed.
You're very kind. Thank you.
Now, I know it's 2018 and it seems indelicate, it seems inappropriate for me to start with your role as mother, but what you've done as a mother is truly remarkable. Tell us about your 25 children.
That's okay. So it's not a typo. People usually think I'm joking. I'm not joking. So my husband and I adopted 20 kids from 8 different countries. I gave birth to 4, and then we are legal guardians for a granddaughter and are raising her. So we have a 10-year gap at the very end of those kids, and now I have a 3-year-old. So, so it's really been a really great experience. Really great.
Well, it is amazing. And there is not a person alive who would say you owed the world anything else, right? Everyone would agree that is enough. But that only begins to describe Holly Richardson. You spent time on Utah's Capitol Hill as a state representative. How many terms did you serve?
I only served part of one, actually. So I was a midterm vacancy appointment. But it was a great opportunity, and I've been a political activist for almost 20 years.
Yeah. Amazing. It's remarkable. So you are now a columnist for the Salt Lake Tribune as well. How did that come about?
You know, they called and asked me. So I had done a political blog for years. Holly on the Hill was my political blog, and kind of all of my social media handles. And the Salt Lake Tribune has a new managing editor. Her name is Jennifer Napier-Pierce. And
Amazing
she called me and said, would you start writing for us? And I said, I'd love to. So I started off twice a month, and then I went to once a month, and now I'm at twice a week. So I really love it a lot.
That's great. Well, you recently made a trip to Bangladesh to visit the Rohingya refugee camp there. The Rohingya Muslims are leaving Burma, right?
Myanmar now, yep.
Myanmar, that's right. But under being persecuted horribly. Some have described it as a genocide or an ethnic cleansing. Whatever it is, it's horrific. And you went to see it. In what capacity did you go? I know you wrote about it for the trip, but in what capacity did you go?
So I've started working with a little Utah nonprofit organization called Hope Worldwide Utah. And the 2 executive directors and I went. I'm their communication director. And we went in January to really just kind of scope out what the situation was. There's almost 1 million refugees there, and 800,000 of them have come since August of 2017. So we're just barely into 2018, and they're just flooding across this border because they're being killed by the Myanmar military. And we had an opportunity to go kind of check it out and work with a partner organization that's also a small nonprofit. They're based in the UK called Amal Foundation. And then I'm going back. So at the time of this recording, I'll be going back in about 10 days. And we'll be going with a small team again to work on food projects, clean water, sanitation. But the scope is unbelievable. So I've been doing international humanitarian work for about 12 years. And then as I traveled to adopt, I've seen all kinds of orphanages and around the world, but I have never seen the depth and level of poverty as I did when I was in these Rohingya camps. So we met, in fact, I met a mom who had a newborn baby in her arms, and that baby had been born in the camps. So she crossed 8 months pregnant. She had 5 other kids, her husband, and they have to cross through marshy, kind of swampy stuff. And then they cross a river, and she's doing this pregnant. They don't have food. They're not able to take things with them. So the kids, to keep their bellies full, are chewing on grass and leaves. And then they finally make it to this camp, and she has to give birth in this camp. And I'm a midwife also. And I do low-tech births, but we're talking about dirt floors and no attendants, nobody there. There's no diapers. I mean, there's nothing. And it's really subsistence living right now, right? I'd love to do women empowerment in these camps, but we're feeding them and giving them clean water and trying to help them stay alive right now.
Well, when you talk about putting 1 million people in a place where there were 0 before, you would have no infrastructure at all. There would be there'd be no water. There would be no sewer. What did you see? How are they coping? Is it obviously you felt it was somewhat safe to visit. I'm just trying to wrap my head around the horror show.
Yeah. So one of the things that we found, of course, is that to your point, there is no infrastructure. So they're building up these hills. And so the hills are really sand. So as the rainy season comes, and that will be our summer, during the summer, we're very worried. And I know international aid organizations of all sizes are very worried that they're at risk of all of their structures collapsing, washing down the side of these hills. They're also cutting trees, and there's more like scrub bushes, but they're cutting them down for firewood to cook their food. And they have almost no food. So the food distribution is rice and lentils and a little bit of cooking oil, and that's it. That's what they have to live on. And for drilling the wells, they have to do it all by hand, and they're going down 850 feet to hit the water table to get clean water on the tops of some of these hills. That's a really long way when you're cranking a stick by hand. Oh. So there is a lot of need, right? They're trying to keep latrines away from the cooking areas, of course, and the water supplies, but they're not always successful in that. We walked through camps where we could see the back of the latrine just kind of dropped into the water that was running through the camp. To keep order, though, the Bangladeshi military has joined in the efforts, actually, and they're doing a really good job of keeping order in the camps. And so everybody has an identification card. Everybody knows where the distribution centers are. And I did not see a lot of chaos. And I saw a lot of very grateful, very humble people. They were happy. Of course, they were disturbed at what had been happening, but they were happy to be alive. They were happy to be in a position where they were safe and that they could keep their kids safe. And it was very, very touching to see how humble and grateful these refugees were.
This is a traditional Muslim population. Have they set up any sort of worship center?
Yes.
Are they?
Yeah, in fact, that's one of the first things that they do. And so when we talk about shelters, it's bamboo strips with plastic sheeting. Not very stable, right? But bamboo and plastic. But one of the first structures that they do for each little section, and they call them villages, but it's a small section, they will build a mosque, and they have worship services, and they teach their kids, right? They're still teaching their kids to worship God, to thank God. And to me, again, very touching. They did not turn away from God. They turned towards God, stayed focused on God, even in the midst of some really big heartache and hardship.
It is just a horrific story.
Yeah, we heard some stories, actually. We met a man who, we met a couple of men, but we met a man who was a little bit older. He has 8 kids, and he was describing to us how he had to scoop kids up under his arms and run down the hill while machine guns are firing at him. And he's doing this, with the machine gun thing. And then he's showing us where he got wounded in the chest, he got shot in the arm, but he was able to get away with his kids safely. But then he showed us, he saw 10 people with their heads chopped off with machetes. Right? Nobody should have to see that. Right?
Oh my gosh. No, just unbelievable.
Yeah, horrific.
It is one of the tragic ironies of the situation is that the president of Myanmar is a Nobel Peace Prize winner.
Yeah, it is tragically ironic, and she had also received an award from the U.S. Holocaust Museum, I think, Memorial Foundation. They've revoked it because she refuses to do anything. She really, literally is just turning her back on what is going on with the Rohingya, and it's really sad. It's very scary, and the official response coming from Myanmar is, well, they deserve it. If anything's happening, and we're not saying there's anything happening, but if it is happening, they deserve it.
It's baffling. As you look at this situation, as you talk to those folks, the Rohingya, and you hear these stories, it's a real life glimpse really into history, right? Yeah. Because every genocide has some parallel, right?
Sure.
Somehow one group of people is convinced that another group of people are sufficiently evil to be eradicated.
Yeah.
What do you learn from being there and seeing it?
Well, look, I mean, I'm very tenderhearted. I think what led me to adopt 20 kids, but I was very, very disturbed in the 90s when I started to hear reports about the Rwandan genocide, and I couldn't understand why we didn't do more as an international community, right? 1 million people in that genocide were executed in 100 days. It was also very horrific. But every genocide has this in common. We dehumanize the other people, the group of people. And for the Rohingya, they're Muslim living in a traditionally Buddhist country, or mostly Buddhist country. And Buddhism is supposed to be a religion of peace. But what is so disturbing and kind of interesting is that there are Buddhist monks who say the Rohingya are reincarnated they're cockroaches. They were cockroaches in a past life. And so it's okay to exterminate them, right? But it's this dehumanization, and it starts small. It's the us versus them mentality. And I think we see it in the United States in politics today. There's an us versus them split. And as soon as you dehumanize the other side, that allows us to hate, and that allows us to do unspeakable things, where if we got to know them, right, they're just like us. They're moms and dads. They want to do good for their family.
It really is just an amazing story that you're putting together for us. And it's hard for me even to imagine what you went through, let alone what they went through. How did you put the trip together? How did you get permission, access to the camps, translators? My gosh, how did that all come about?
Well, like I mentioned, we did work with a partner organization, and so they have people on the ground. It's Amal Foundation. And so they helped us with the lodging and access to the camps. But we put together our own airfare, got our visas. We wanted to do multiple entry visas, and so we sent our stuff off to the consulate in LA, and that was kind of an adventure. They asked for 5 business days, and we were on this really tight deadline. And so I sent it 15 business days in advance of when I needed to leave. So at about 8 business days, I start calling, and they're like, oh, we'll get to it. Don't worry. Right. And we're getting down to the very end, and I'm calling them, and I'm like, okay, like, we need this visa. And they're like, well, but it says here that you're your flight is not until the 23rd. And I said, that's my return flight. And they're like, oh, well, we'll get it in the mail. And I got it the day before I left. So that was a little bit of an adventure, but we took a longer route there. It took us 42 hours of travel time to get there and 43 and a half to get back. We routed through China and Thailand, which there's no real direct flights getting into Bangladesh. It's not exactly high on people's list of tourist destinations. On the trip going back, coming up in about a week and a half, it's only going to be 22 hours, which seems short to me. So we're going just to China, and then from China, we'll head over to Dhaka in Bangladesh. But that's how we did it. And there are hotels. They're not very expensive. We had beds and air conditioning, which we didn't need at that time of the year, and intermittent Wi-Fi. So it was good.
Amazing. Well, Holly, you've had an amazing life and career, and yet you're still young. What is the
I'm a grandma.
What is the most important lesson you've learned?
Well, I think it's that everybody can and should make a difference. I think the needs in the world are so great that we cannot just sit back and hope that somebody else is going to go do something. And we don't have to travel around the world to make a difference. We don't have to adopt 20 kids to make a difference, but there are people. We can walk across the street and hug a neighbor. I mean, I also volunteer sometimes at a local food pantry so that I can stay grounded in knowing that there are needs in my own community that need people to be involved and working. So I think that's it, that everybody can and should be out trying to make a difference.
Well, that's a great lesson. Well, Holly, I've taken more of your time than is fair. Before you go, would you take just a minute and tell people how they can learn more about your organization, connect with you personally, follow you on social media, and read you in the Tribune? Tell us everything.
So I'm in the Tribune typically Wednesday online and Saturday in print, so 2 different articles. I'm on Facebook, Holly Tree Richardson. Tree is my maiden name. And people can friend me or follow me there. I'm on Twitter as Holly on the Hill, at Holly on the Hill. And I am a frequent tweeter. I use Twitter a lot. I like it a lot. And our organization is Hope Worldwide Utah. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram. And our website is hopeworldwideutah.org. And we're always looking for people to join us, both in fundraising efforts, in local efforts. We work with local refugees in Utah, and then on these trips as well.
Fantastic. Well, Holly, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. We wish you every success in all that you do, but especially in your next trip to Bangladesh.
Thanks, Devin.
All righty, let's do some good.
At Caring Crowd, we believe everyone has the power to make a difference. Through our crowdfunding platform for community health, we empower passionate people to drive real change. Whether you work for a nonprofit organization, volunteer, or want to get involved for the first time, you can post a campaign on Caring Crowd. Join us, because caring is where change begins.
Thank you for listening. This podcast is available at youtube.com/Devin Thorpe. Subscribe to this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes by searching for Your Mark on the World. Every weekday, Devin hosts a CEO, celebrity, entrepreneur, or other changemaker here on the Your Mark on the World show to inspire and prepare you to make your mark. Devin is a champion of social good, writing about, advocating for, and advising people who are doing good. He is a Forbes contributor who is a recognized thought leader in social entrepreneurship, impact investing, and crowdfunding. To book Devin as a speaker, visit devinthorpe.com.